No, I don't want to record. All right. Good evening, everyone. It's 6:30. And well, it's not as beautiful of a day as it was on our last call. I'm sure everyone wants to get back to their evening. So I'm gonna respect everybody's time and just get started. I don't have a lot of slides tonight. We just wanted to go over a couple of things that came up last week and then and stuff about the robot game. So you all should have gotten an email from me. I believe I sent it Friday that we are not going to be holding sectionals this year. We just don't have enough teams mathematically. It doesn't make any sense. So right now we're sitting at about 435 teams. And honestly, any teams that are registering this week probably aren't going to play in our regular season. So that's kind of where we are right now. So that means that you guys will all advance straight from your regional. If you advance to, oh, I have a typo there. They will not advance directly from regionals to sectionals. They will advance directly from regionals to state. I'm sorry about that. I will get that fixed before I post that. But teams will be advancing directly to state this year. Now, because we're not having sectionals and we have a venue, we decided to offer a non-advancing tournament in January. And we've done this before in the past and haven't done it for a while, but it gives teams who get a late start, like for instance, anybody who registers this week, or maybe even last week. There's a fair number of schools that don't get started until this month. It gives, rookie teams a little bit longer time to kind of figure FLL out. There's a lot of moving parts with FLL. Or if they just want a longer season. We're going to make decisions we're going to have the deadline be October 31st. If you want to move from your regional to this not advancing event in January, either use that link in the email that I sent. It goes to a Google form or email either myself or Jeannie, and we will work all that out. We need at least 12 teams to make this event viable. So our deadline is going to be October 31st. If you are a team that signed up for a regular regional and you decide you want to try this non-advancing event, and let's say it doesn't fill, we're going to leave you in your originally scheduled event, the one that you picked. We're not going to actually physically move anyone until we have those 12 teams. And just so, this was a question that I got, it's not an opportunity for a second event. This is just an alternative event. So I just want to let everybody know about this event. And I was just wondering if anybody has any questions about that, they can let us know. And I'm sorry, I should have started off the evening by telling you who I am. I'm Vicki Cody. And I'm with iTech Kids. And tonight we have Jeannie on the line and Cheryl Muller's on the line too. So, but Jeannie and I'll be answering questions tonight. So I'm sorry about that. So if anybody has any questions about this non-advancing tournament, any questions, Jeannie, in the chat? All right. Okay. So tonight, our real focus here is the robot game. And we did get some people submitting questions ahead of time. And so we just wanted to throw out a couple of reminders. So one thing to remember, so with this image is showing us is how the missions are written, where they have, the picture and then the little blurb off to the right and all that text between the two lines of pictures. So what we wanted to remind you guys all is that blue italicized text is very important. That will tell you, should something be touching, like for instance, touching the mat, can equipment, a lot of times it'll say it cannot have equipment touching it at the end of the match. That kind of a thing. Is it in or is it completely in? Because those are two different things. You know, if it just says in, then it can be partially in. Completely in means the whole thing has to be in. So really watch those italicized, that little italicized line there. And I'm going to show you a couple examples. So we pulled out some examples. The first one is mission 13, power to X. Well, you'll notice there is no blue italicized paragraph. And so it just says right there in the black, the energy unit is completely in the hydrogen plant target area. So completely in, not on the line, not hanging over, completely in. But notice that it doesn't say touching. It doesn't say touching, but it says completely in. So that means it is in that, think of that circle as like a cylinder, sort of. But then the rechargeable battery, if you look at that underneath that little blue line, it says, well, the black line above it says an energy unit is completely in the rechargeable battery target area. So that's completely in, just like the power to X. However, this blue paragraph underneath defines which is the rechargeable battery and defines that it is not an energy unit. And it also says that the energy units may not be touching any team equipment at the end of the match. So even though it doesn't say it in that black line, this blue paragraph gives it a little bit more definition. And so that brings me to, if it doesn't say that you can't do it, then that means you can. So, and this is another question. We've gotten a lot of questions about different missions. People saying it doesn't say touching, or it doesn't say completely in, or something like that. So if it doesn't say it, don't add words to it. So, and that's where I circled this paragraph on, or this first sentence on page 16, is that the robot game wording means exactly what it says. It doesn't mean anything extra. So just make sure that you are not, we all like to put words into sentences, you know, when you're making an assumption. So don't make any assumption, just read the words word for word and see if whatever it is your team is doing is following these rules. All right, and another question that we got quite a few on was about scoring. So scoring does happen at the end of the match. So for instance, someone, if you score an energy unit in power to X, you can't turn around then and take that energy. Well, you can, but you can turn around and take that energy unit and score it somewhere else, but it's only going to score in one place. So it's what happens at the end of the match. So also, if you score something and then your robot runs amok, it can de-score what your kids have already done, or it can push something into a scoring position that wasn't in a position before. It works both ways. So we just wanted to reiterate that the scoring does happen at the end of the match. And that this clip was taken off of page 6 of the robot game rulebook. Oh, say that 5 times fast. Robot game rulebook. And it's also found on page 21 as well. So we just wanted to point that out. And really, those are the big overarching questions that we got. There were no additional updates this week. And then, Jeannie, do you want to start off with some questions that were submitted?
Yep, I'll go ahead and ask these. One of the first ones, are teams allowed to make changes to their Spike Prime robot, or must it be built exactly per the instructions? We encourage you to make changes to the robot. That's part of the fun of the iteration. Starting with that base robot is not a bad idea, especially for a new team, but making those changes along the way, improving on an arm or improving on the drive base. And if you're making those changes, we want to hear about it in your robot design judging. So yes, please, you will probably change that robot quite a bit, take pictures along the way, because kids will forget what is going on. All right, and there is our head ref, Josh. Hi, Josh.
Good evening.
So I will ask the questions and then I will let you answer them.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, hang on. So for mission 2, can the oil truck be on the robot and the robot park in the oval at the end of the run? The rule states the truck has to be over the oval, but does not say it has to be touching the table.
That is correct. So yes, the truck could be on the robot. It does not say that it must be touching the mat. It just says it has to be over. So yeah, they could have it on the robot.
And then just at least part of that truck has to be at least partly in on that
Yep.
one.
Yep.
So I love this one. I'm assuming that it's okay, but if the kids discover an unconventional way to complete a mission, not the way it was intended, but accomplishes the end result, do they still get the points if they meet the rule and solve it differently?
Absolutely. We highly encourage non-traditional or unconventional ways to solve mission models, and we absolutely love to see the kids think outside the box and try to figure things out. That hand mission is a pretty good opportunity where not only can they interact with theirs, but the rules do not say that you cannot reach over and interact with the other team's hand as well. So as long as you're not interfering with their robot, you can find some pretty interesting ways to make these missions to score.
Yeah. And like you said, that's some of our favorite parts, is seeing what the kids come up with.
It is.
So Vicky kind of talked about this, and I just want you to hammer it again. Can the same energy units be used for multiple missions? Can it be pushed to the power to the X and then also to the rechargeable and then placed in the toy factory hopper?
So most of these missions require that we score them at the end of the run. So if the energy unit must be in a certain place to score, then you can't push it there and then take it away and take it someplace else. It must be there at the end of the run. Now there's at least one caveat that we've talked about where an energy unit. What was that? Okay, I guess I'm not allowed to tell you that one. But there is at least one opportunity where an energy unit could be used to score in at least 2 situations.
Yeah.
So keep an eye out for that one, or have the kids keep an eye out for that one.
Yes, exactly. All right, then I've got, can a team use a jig to set up their robot in the correct position and then move it away before launching? Does the jig need to be within the boundaries of the launch area at all times?
So the anything that's used by the team needs to be in one of the 2 home areas during the run. So if they were to set it up in the launch area, move it before launching, that's fine. Or if they were to set up in the launch area and let the robot go and then move it after the robot takes off, that's fine as well. Everything must fit within the home areas, though.
All right. So Richard asks, isn't there a rule about table boundaries? So I think he's referring to you talking about doing the other team's hand.
Yep. Yeah. So I believe there's actually an exception in the rules. Maybe there isn't one for that one, but typically if the robot is doing something to enable scoring, it should not be outside of the field boundaries.
So it says the team, so teams may not interfere with the opposing field or robot unless there's a mission exception. And the general consensus seems to be that the hand is, you could do it as long as you're not interfering with the other team's robot. So you don't want to be reaching over there and cranking on it when that other team is trying to interact with it. And that will be certainly something, gracious professionalism, talking to that other team, make sure you know what their plans are. So you don't reach over and crank on their hand when the other one is reaching around.
Yeah, that could definitely pinch a few noses on the other side of the table.
Yes, exactly. All right. Oh, Vicky's got a question. Go ahead, Vicky.
All right, there was a question. Can the innovation project carry the energy units along with it?
So yes, as long as the scoring opportunity does not say the energy unit must be touching the mat. So if it does not say that, or if the mission does not specify that the energy unit cannot be touching equipment, which is things you bring, which would include your innovation model, and the mission does not specify that the energy unit must be touching the mat, then the energy unit could be on your innovation model and go out to different areas on the field.
So then remember update number 1. So combining with the mission model is allowed, but if you combine a mission model with anything, including the robot and presumably your innovation project, the combination needs to be loose or simple enough that if asked to, you could free the mission model in perfect original condition immediately. So don't get it all cranked up in there where you've got it latched and Legoed and all those things. It's got to be able to be removed in original condition immediately. So that was update number 1. And like Vicki says, we haven't had any updates since August 24th. Another question about the hand. If you were to try to move the opposite hand and it were to accidentally cause their hand to reset, how would that be scored?
So that's one where you want to be very careful in what you do. That's a tough one because that could be considered if the other team has already engaged the hand and put it in the scoring position and you reach over and undo it, then that would be interference with the other team. You are undoing their scoring opportunity. If they are not interacting with the hand and you reach over and just don't actually engage the hand, then there's no issue with that. That just means, whoops, it didn't work.
Right. Yeah, and then the rule, sorry, Josh. So it says points failed or lost due to interference will score automatically for the other team. So if you went in and de-scored theirs, hopefully that ref saw what was going on, and there would be a conversation about that.
Yeah.
All right, so I have a super long question, and it's one that we are actually waiting from FIRST for official clarification. We've kind of decided what we are doing in Minnesota, but we're waiting for FIRST to give us the official yes or no, and hopefully we'll hear back from them soon. So I'll read this, Josh, and then hopefully you and I agree. For the dinosaur mission, if they carry the dino on the robot and launch it out, and it goes completely out of the right base, but then gets stuck on the mat, can the left side grab it? If the dino is still on the robot when it gets stuck, do they get to take the dino too and score points? My read was that if it falls off the robot, you let it fall to rest. But if it's on the robot, it's still in play and go to the other side. And do you want my opinion on this, Josh?
I would agree that I'm trying to remember the exact rules on stranded, but if the dinosaur falls off the robot, then it stays, you live in your own mess. So it stays wherever it falls off. If the robot is stranded and it still has control of the whatever it's carrying, whatever its cargo is, then it can be taken back by the team. But I'm
Yeah, and I
trying to
think
find.
that, yeah, so I'm looking at during the match, number 3, page 20. And basically the caveat on that is teams may not interrupt their robot in such a way that they earn points from it. So you can't grab that robot and dinosaur and bring it to the left side and that dinosaur get the points for being on the left side. But my take would be, if the energy unit is in there, you would get that, but you're not going to get because you physically picked up the robot and brought it over to that left side.
Yeah, you cannot create a scoring opportunity by interrupting the robot or by physically manipulating it. So like if the robot is pushing the dinosaur out or an energy unit out and you run and grab the robot right when it gets whatever the cargo is to where it needs to go, then that does not count because you are creating a scoring opportunity. Your robot should be able to drive out, stop, and then at least back up before you grab it.
I could be wrong, but I thought there was something in the rule book about mission objects needing to be handed to the referee in that case.
Yes, there were some updates on that. And that's if technicians interrupt the robot. So let's see here. If technicians interrupt the robot, it must be relaunched. If the robot was outside of home, even partly, when it was interrupted, they lose 1 precision token. So if the robot is heading out of home and they grab the robot, they lose a precision token for that. If the robot was partly outside of home, you bring the robot back into the home area. If into that home area, so whichever, if it's partly outside of, say, the right home area, then if they interrupt it before it completely leaves that home area, you return it to the right home area. If it's completely outside of either home area, then it can be returned to either home area. So it can go back to whichever one. I don't know that I would use that as a strategy, though. It would be the intention that I think we're seeing here is that First wants the robot to be able to successfully drive back and forth so that it goes out, does something, goes to the next home. That team, that group interacts with it. Then it goes out, does stuff, goes to the next home, and that group interacts with it, and it kind of goes back and forth.
Oh, I'm not saying it can be a strategy. I'm saying I don't even think it can be a strategy because I think the model has to be given to the rep. Sorry, I don't have the book in front of me, but I thought I read that somewhere.
Yeah, no. So here's
Josh,
what happens.
I can read that. Do you have the exact rule, Josh?
Yeah, I got
okay.
Right here. Here's what happens to any equipment or mission models that were in contact with the robot when it was interrupted outside of home, even partly. If the object was with the robot when it was launched, you keep it and you bring it back with the robot. So that's if the robot still has contact with it. If the object was obtained after the robot was launched, so the robot drives out, it grabs something, and then the kids grab the robot, then that mission model must be given to the refs.
Yeah, and this was my question, and I guess my kids are trying to get it from one side to the other, but sometimes it runs into mission 11.
Okay.
So it's being carried on the robot and it stays on the robot when it hits mission 11, but it can, if it gets stuck there, they can lose a precision point, correct? And then move it to the left home because it's completely out of the right base at that point. And then I just wasn't sure what happens then to the dinosaur that they still have on the robot. Like, do they lose the points for that, or do they potentially still get the points even?
So if they put an energy unit in the dinosaur, they would get points for that, but they would not get points for the robot being on the other side of the field.
Okay. Perfect.
And I think that, so I think one of the things that is going to be challenging is if that robot gets out there and the kids are going to interrupt it. They got caught up, is the kids better know which side is taking it. So if you're on the, if it's a kid that's a technician on the left side, they're gonna have to bring it back into the left side. They can't grab that and then hand it off to the kids on the other side. Same thing, if they're on the right side and that robot, they meant it to get to the left side, they can't pick it up on one side and hand it over. They can ask the referee, because sometimes the kids can't reach it, and they can say, can you get it? And it's gonna go that direction or that direction. So they're going to have to be clear with the referees if they're asking the referee to help them reach across the table.
And we need to first to specify that if the kids must stay on whichever side of the table they start on too. So we can't have kids running back and forth from side to side. They do have the rule in there of you must have 2 technicians at each side. If there's a team of 3, there's not much that we can we can't really have 2 kids at either side, so it could
Yeah.
be 2 on one, 1 on the other.
All right, so here's another question. Say the dinosaur or other equipment falls off and is not touching the robot, but is in the way of future mission routes. Can they use a precision token to remove the non-robot equipment?
So this is where we like to use the phrase, you have to live in your own mess. So if the robot drives out, drops something in a place you don't want it, it stays there. The kids cannot grab it, the ref cannot grab it. The robot can come back out and move it again. So if they think that the robot is strong enough or can access the mission on the other side of the cargo, then they could try to run that mission, but they have to live in their own mess in that case.
Once the person comes back, Joe comes back there and do it. Start going the second one, the next person go. Ready? Ready, go. Oh, good, job, and that's good, good, there you go. Line, good, good. Make sure it's staying low. Concentrate on getting it staying low. Hold out. Get your plus down. Stay low.
Okay, yeah, okay. Josh, I wasn't able to hear that. I'm not sure he was
I
needing
didn't
to talk to us. Okay.
I didn't catch that either.
Yeah, so if that was a question, you'll have to put it in chat because we actually couldn't understand that. So here's a good one. Can you complete more than one mission on the right side before sending the robot over to the left side?
Yeah, absolutely. The robot can drive out and come from the right side and then come back to the right side as many times as you want. But there's a lot of stuff over on the left side that a lot of scoring opportunities over there. So the robot does not have to drive back and forth. It can be launched from one side exclusively if that is what your team decides to do.
And then here's a question. Can a team say red and blue sides instead of left and right due to some teammates with issues with left and right? That actually might be super helpful for the refs to say, send it to red or send it to blue.
Yep. Yeah, the teams can do that. And going back to that, the question before this one, so the robot can go out and do as many missions at once as it, in a run as it can. So if it leaves and it does 2 or 3 or 4 missions in a program and then goes to either side, that's okay as well.
Let's see, we have a team of 7. Can 3 swap in and out on one side and the other 4 swap in and out on the other side?
Yes, so you could have 3 kids on one side, 4 kids on the other, and we can only have 2 technicians at each side engaging with the table and the robot. So on the side with 3, then there would just be the 3rd kid would be standing back a little bit, and on the side with 4, 2 of the technicians would be standing back until they swap in.
All right. Oh, Jeannie's microphone and or computer just died. So, let's see, we have another question, relating to the robot. Are we limited to parts in the Spike Prime kit? Or can we add our own parts as needed?
So you can add all the parts you would like as long as they are official Lego pieces.
That's right. So you can get your Star Wars kit and you can put R2D2 on it and do whatever you want, as long as it's Lego. So. All right. All right, does anybody else have any, oh, here's one. Is there a proper way to swap kids in and out? Does one stand back and then swap in and the kid at the table steps back?
Ideally, they would do it calmly and and not run into each other or run into the table. They get pretty excited at the table, so we always try to make sure that you know, they're at least an arm's length back from the table if they're not a technician working with the robot. But all they have to do is just swap. They can step up and one of them steps back.
And and we have that practice round. So if the kids have questions, you know, I think the refs are going to be pretty clear where the kids are going to stand, because now we're going to have a lot of kids up by the table this year. So that's going to be interesting. And you know, if you are in a December event, come to a November event, because lots of teams do the swapping thing. It's a good way to see what to expect for your event. So come to an earlier event. That's what I would suggest.
Yep, and this two sides of the table is new for all of us, so I think
Yes.
we've it's going to be an experience. And how do we manage 4 kids at once on either side of the table and keep reminding them that you can't swap sides of the table,
Right.
you have to stay on your side. But we're usually pretty lenient with, we remind people, the kids, that only 2 technicians at each side, but you know, if there's 3 technicians for a split second while they're swapping out, that's fine.
Yeah. Oh, Jeannie's back.
I'm back. Sorry.
Are there any other questions? I mean, feel free to unmute yourself, or we're happy to. Oh, here Ann has a question. New coach. I see a lot of examples of robots out on YouTube. Is it okay to use one of these examples with our own models?
Yep, it is. So you can download plans, you can copy somebody else's robot. We encourage you to have a unique design that fits your needs. But a lot of teams will start just with a really generic robot with 2 wheels and a caster on the back of it, and then put a whole bunch of stuff on it to do things, different attachments. So that has less to do with the actual robot run and more to do with the design judging, because the design judges are going to ask, where did you get this design? And if you say, well, we found it on YouTube, you know, that may not be the best thing to tell a judge.
And one more thing, and I learned this last year, and it was a super valuable lesson for the design judge. If your kids come up with attachments that you don't ultimately end up using, bring them to the judging anyway. The judges absolutely love it when you show stuff and kind of go through your process of elimination and all of those pieces.
Absolutely. The key is the process. As a design judge, we want to understand, you started this season theoretically with nothing, and you got to this point where you have a robot that does things. So how did you get there? How does the robot do things? Why does it do things? Why did you choose these missions? Why did you choose that order of missions? And did you skip any missions for any reason? Are there things that you tried and you said, it's not worth the time because there aren't enough points there? So yeah, tell the judges the story of how you got to where you are and why.
And I'll add in with the question about using a robot from the internet. Just give credit where credit is due. So if you start out with a basic plan from somebody else, let the judges know, you know, who designed this, and then how did you improve it, right? Just like with the innovation project, you know, you might not have a completely
Mhm.
unique idea, but you're improving on somebody else's idea. And so have the kids document that and talk about that.
It's a great
Yep,
point.
and we'll have sometimes we'll have teams start with last year's robot. You know, they never took it apart, and they say, well, we had a robot that drove really well. We know how to program it, so now we just need to figure out how to put things on it to do these missions.
All right, there's another quick question about tagging in and out. So Ann asks, what if they tag out on one side? Do they always have to return to that same side? I think that's what you
Yep,
mean.
so
there.
they can't leave that side. So a kid can't go from the right side to the left side, even if they're just a spectator, if they're not going to interact with the robot. We can't have them running back and forth from side to side. So if they start on the right, they stay on the right. If they start on the left, they stay on the left.
They can switch sides in the next match.
Yeah. Yep, they do have so they'll have four matches, the what would be the practice round, and then 3 official runs. Is that we're doing 3
Mhm.
official runs
Yep.
this time? Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
So they can definitely switch sides. If they have more than one robot, they can run a different robot at each different match, but we can only have one robot for each match. And they can run different missions at each match. They do not have to run the exact same programs or missions.
All right.
And then we have some experienced coaches on this call. And I had a question earlier that said, our robot seems to work really well time after time. And then all of a sudden the kids have lined it up the same and it doesn't hit the same spot. Any advice from some of our experienced coaches out there? I said, welcome to Lego League. 'Cause
So I will tell you, I'm a 4th-year coach and my kids still run into that exact same issue. Couple of things that you can do to help with it. It'll never be solved, but a couple of things you can do to help. When you're in the launch area, alignment is key. And one of the things I always tell my kids is not to start in the middle of the launch area. Instead, start against the wall. And the first thing we have their robot do is actually back up. That way it's always square against the wall versus it being slightly tilted one way or another. The other thing that we do is instead of telling the robot's attachments to move a certain number of rotations, you can actually set it on the robot to move to a certain position as far as degrees, and then it hits that exact same position every time. It's really good for accuracy.
Yep, and calibrating your sensors as well, especially if you're using the gyro. If that is not calibrated, or if that gets a little weird, things get crazy pretty quick.
I'll add in another little tip too. So when they're lining up a robot into a start position, a lot of times they'll set it down and then they'll twist the robot by hand to get it just right. When you twist the robot like that, it's sort of preloading the wheels. And when it starts out, it's not going to start out straight in a straight line. It'll often hang to the left or hang to the right, depending on how the wheels are under pressure. So
Driveline lash.
Yeah. And
Yep.
Amy is suggesting to check your battery level and clean off your wheels, including the little roller ball. And that's a good point, especially if you have animals or, you know.
And especially those spike prime wheels, if they're using those blue spike prime wheels, my teams run just like the blue painter's tape over them before like a match or after they've done a couple practice runs.
Oh, do they gather a lot of dirt? Is that what you're
Yeah, they
saying?
gather a lot of stuff and they are much more prone to slipping, partly
Oh.
because the spike prime robots tend to be lighter and partly because there's just no grip on those. They're like racing wheels. So some of my teams have gone back to the old EV3 wheels that have some tread to them.
Yep.
Yeah, my kids actually had to weigh down the back of the robot because the wheels were slipping so much.
Right. So there's a question on the gyro sensor on the spike prime. One of the important things to remember is we saw this issue with EV3 and it's the same issue with the spike prime. When the spike prime is started up, you want to make sure that spike prime is not moving. It's not traveling. It's not running down the hallway on your way to the performance area, because if you do that, the gyro has not had time to spin up and find zero. Okay, so when the spike prime is starting, make sure that the kids, that robot is not being jostled around. It only takes about 5 seconds to start up. But if they have started that when they're walking down the hallway, basically the gyro does not know where zero is. So you're going to have issues with your turns. So if you're finding that happening in your practices, issues with the gyro, make sure the kids are setting it. They can set on the floor. That performance table is not always the most sturdy thing, because the team across from you may jostle that table as that gyro is starting up. So you want to make sure you're starting your robot in a quiet, sturdy place. Okay.
Yeah, our team actually with the spike prime, one of my veteran teams was having that problem last week. And the gyro on the spike prime, if it's really being moved around a lot when you start it up, it won't even take a gyro reading at all. Like you can move the robot all around and they stay zero in the port view. So they were wondering why their turns weren't working.
Yep. Yeah, and I've been showing that during my programming trainings. I'm showing that this is what it does if I'm wiggling this as we start. And I run the exact same program where I've started it in that quiet, steady place. And it is a world of difference. And the kids may not know that because, in practice, they're not running from place. Well, sometimes they are, but they're not running from place to place. At a tournament, we know they're running down the hall, getting ready for their next things. So another tip was on there was decrease power, task to find that sweet spot. There's definitely a sweet spot finding these robots. Turns, my teams, we always turn slowly, more consistency. Another good tip, sometimes it's hard to see why something isn't working all of a sudden. A slow motion video helps a ton to see if they're barely missing something. That's a great tip. Plus, how cool would that be to see your robot in slow motion?
Mhm. Yep. And try to make sure that the robots are on when you get to the performance table for your runs, because it does take a little while for these robots to get fired up and ready to go, and we don't always have time for that in the runs.
Right.
So fire it up in the pits.
All right. Any other questions? I don't see any more in the chat,
I
Josh.
don't either.
Yeah, I don't see either.
All right.
All right.
I'm okay with going home early.
Yeah, if you guys don't have any questions, so our last coach call is next Tuesday, I believe. Yes, is next Tuesday, and it's going to be a little free for all. We're going to go over, any judging, any robot. I'm sure the more you meet with your teams, the more robot questions you guys are going to have. And so we'll talk about that stuff. And I believe Tuesday is
Vicky's wrong. It's Tuesday, November 1st. Not,
November 1st, not next Tuesday.
yep,
Sorry.
not next Tuesday.
All right. Thank you for checking me.
Yep.
So. 2
And then
weeks.
we will have a tournament call the week of the tournaments, and those will be tournament specific. So the November call will be about those November tournaments, specifics, last minute things on any judging or ref questions. And same thing, we'll have 2 in December, the first
2 in
week
December.
tournament, the second one.
And just so you guys know, our tournament pages are going to go live pretty soon. And those tournament specific calls the links will be up on those tournament pages. So, and I
Hey,
will
Vicky,
also email them.
I've got one more question that I would love
Okay.
our experienced coaches to chime in. We don't have a full-size board. and don't want to move on from place to place. Any ideas to manage without a board for practice? So I think they're talking about the walls.
I don't have a full-size board. I work on my kitchen table. And it's not ideal. My kid gets paranoid, but we like start it up and then we stand around the table. We have enough people. But it's worked. The robot hasn't fallen off.
Yeah.
So poor man's solution. That's what we do. We stand around the table and make sure we have enough. His brother stands on one side. I stand on one side, and we make sure it doesn't fall off. And with this year, it's really nice because it's basically split in half. So we will alternate between two sides with the exception of that dyno mission.
Right.
Been able to do it that way.
And you could also put it on the floor and just get some 2x4s and just make, that are loose.
Yeah, we've had teams put their mats on the floor and tape off the home areas and then just put whatever they have there. One team was using boxes on, totes on the sides.
So
Yeah.
the solution that we came up with in Minneapolis is you can buy a piece of garage insulation at Menards, Home Depot, Lowe's, or whatever. It is the correct size. And then to actually easily store it, if you score it, put your knee into it and then reinforce where on the other side where you scored it with some duct tape. It's super close to the dimensions of the actual physical board, and it makes it really easy to store because you can just fold it up, stick it in the wall behind a file cabinet or whatever in our classrooms, because we don't have a lot of our classrooms in Minneapolis don't have a place to store the full-size board.
Right.
So we had to come up with something that could be easily done. You don't have the walls then, but you get the board.
All right.
Yeah, we had a styrofoam one last year, and this year we found a great design for a folding table, and myself and another one of the coaches built it out, and it folds up and stores behind a table in the classroom during the week.
Yeah, we actually made our board out of styrofoam last year. And if you get a second piece of that styrofoam, you can cut out the walls, and then you just use a little bit of construction glue. And the kids loved using way too much duct tape, but we got it put together. Let's put it that way. And it hasn't come apart yet.
All right. All right. Those are some great tips.
Definitely.
Creativity, I'd say. All right. All right. Jeannie, do you see anything else in there? Don't. All right. I think if there aren't any questions, I see someone said, do the December 3rd competitions need to attend the November call? No, they don't. The December events will have their own call. So.
Jeannie replied to that one and said
Yeah.
the
Oh, she
December
did.
3rd competition has
Yep.
their call on November 29th. So
Yes. Okay. All right. So are we good? You guys are feeling good? Feeling great? Solving all the missions? All right.
I know I'm looking forward to seeing how the teams take advantage of 2 homes and 2 launch areas.
I'm really looking
are they gonna
forward
do
to
with
that.
that?
Really looking forward to that. All right. Well, it's 7:20. So I think if there are no more questions, I think we'll say goodnight.
All right.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
All right. See you guys in
Yep.
like 2 weeks.
Thanks for your time.
All right.
Have
All
a great day.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.